This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, November 20th, 2023. Case file number 1340, written by Library DJ 0808. Glitches behind the curtains. When I was in high school, we had a very small budget and depended on local shops and thrift stores in the town to give us donations and leftovers for costumes, props, etc. For this play, naturally, we needed a crap ton of plants, so we got some old flowers from the local florist shops and some fake stuff from our own stash of props. The local college even offered to let us perform on one of their stages, so we would have better quality lighting and seating as a favor. It was great. For a week we did this play and all went well. The last night we ran the show was the night I saw something that I, to this day, cannot rationalize or explain. I had a relatively large part in the play. So most nights, when I wasn't on stage, I was off stage trying to catch my breath and rest a little until my cue came. The last night we ran the show, I decided to watch my peers from behind the set to try to soak in some memories. It was my last play before graduating. From behind the set, as I was peeking out through a window in the flower shop, I noticed small, measured movements on stage a distance away from the actors. I looked more closely, and it looked like a flower in a terracotta pot was undulating. Its petals were slowly opening and closing in a measured rhythm. I thought I was seeing things, so I literally rubbed my eyes to clear them. That flower was freaking moving. I stared at it for a good minute, maybe a minute and a half, trying to figure out what the hell I was looking at. I knew it wasn't a fake flower or something mechanical. I had helped set the stage as a prop manager every performance night. It was a real flower. I had also been working on the set and props for weeks and weeks and knew which ones were fake and which ones were real, donated flowers and so on. This was a real flower in a pot on stage, moving. The best I could figure was that the heat of the lights was causing it to, I couldn't go investigate like I badly wanted to because we were in the middle of a scene. The next day, we had so much help from college-age theater kids and our own crew that the set got cleared before I could find that particular flower. I told one person about it, and they wrote me off like I must have been seeing things. I get it, I thought I was too. But I stared long enough and looked so closely to make sure it wasn't just me that, I'm sure it wasn't just me. It's not scary or even that interesting, but I absolutely cannot explain what I saw. In fact, if anyone has ideas, I'd love to hear them. Bonus file written by Surely Unimportant. The Unexplained Hospital Ring Miracle. A few weeks before my granddad died in April, I started wearing 2 rings I had inherited from a family member on a chain around my neck. I've had them for years and always wear them when I feel like I need a bit of luck or support. Makes me feel as if someone is looking out for me, even though I know I don't really believe in the afterlife or the supernatural. I knew he was sick, so I'd not long start wearing them again, only I hadn't put them on a chain this time because the uniform policy at work meant I couldn't wear them as I usually did on my finger. The clasp on the chain can be quite stiff to open, so I just throw it over my head with the rings attached because it's long enough to not have to open. So the rings and the chain had been together for a few weeks at this point, without me ever opening the clasp because there was no need. So I was at work with another colleague about 2 feet away from me. I had the rings tucked well down my shirt, hanging right around heart level, my uniform zipped up over them, a plastic apron and my gloves on. I'm a nurse. I was busy doing something, so my hands weren't anywhere near the rings, and I wasn't even thinking about them. There wasn't any way I could have touched them or got them caught on anything. Then I felt something cold touch my stomach, and the next thing I knew, one of the rings had dropped on the floor. I was confused at how it had happened, and I thought maybe the chain had broken, even though it's quite sturdy, and I didn't want to lose it, so I took my apron and gloves off and pulled the chain out of my shirt. The chain was intact and still clasped tightly together, and the other ring was still on it. So somehow, one ring had come cleanly off the chain without the other one falling off, and with the chain still clasped together. My colleague was just staring at me like, what the hell? And I'm not really a believer in the supernatural, like I said, so I just cracked a joke saying, I hope that wasn't a sign or someone trying to tell me something, and laughed it off. Not 5 minutes later, I got a call to say my granddad had deteriorated and I needed to come home. I left work that day to care for him, and 2 weeks later, he died. I know there's got to be an explanation for it, but part of me doesn't want to know it because the mystery makes me feel like maybe I was actually being looked out for. I wear the rings on my finger now because I can't shake the feeling that there was something more to that little mystery than the logical side of my brain wants to believe. And frick the uniform policy. If anyone calls me out on it, I'll tell them a ghost told me to wear him. Case file number 1341, written by Kit Kat Patty Wax, The Tale of the White Feathers. My mother always told me to look for signs. She was very spiritual, not religious, but she did believe in angels and spirit guides and all that. I never believed in any of that stuff, but she would always tell me all these entities from heaven would send you signs as long as you were looking for them. License plate numbers, radio stations, headlines on newspapers, and of course, white feathers. She always told me to ask my angels for guidance whenever I was having trouble and to look for white feathers. Well, I joined the military a few years ago and got shipped out to boot camp. I was the underachiever of all my siblings, so it was the only thing worthwhile I had done with my life up until that point. I needed to make myself and my family proud. I had to prove that I could do it. I injured my hip during a training exercise near the end and was terrified of not being able to complete the training being sent back home a failure. We had a 20-mile ruck march and a grueling 5 days in the field coming up, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it with my bad hip. So as a desperate reach, I asked my angels for guidance. And I crap you not, 2 minutes later, I walk over to my bunk and what do I see laying there on my blanket but a little white feather? And I start seeing them everywhere. On the floor, on my uniform, on my gear, outside even. I don't know if it's just that I didn't notice them all before, or maybe the pillows in the bays were getting beat up after being used for months, but I kept seeing them. And I marched 20 miles, killed those 5 days, and passed my final PT test with flying colors. Case file number 1342, written by Anonymous, Riding with my Doppelganger. I was on public transit one time, and saw someone that was just about the same height as me and looked to have my body type. I just shrugged it off in that moment. As a taller girl with a slightly bigger frame, it's not that rare. The only seat is one directly across from her, so I sat down and put my headphones in. I tend to watch people while I ride to school, so I started to do exactly that. I took a closer look at the girl in front of me, the same shade, cut, and colored hair. Weird. Her head is down, so I can't see her face, but when the bell rings to tell it's the next stop, she looks up. Oh my lord, she has my face. She looks up at me and blinks twice. Same color eyes. I have very odd eyes. So brown they look black. Her eyes are so brown they look black. She stands up and walks off the bus. I turn to see her go. Sure, my eyes are playing tricks on me. She's gone. It's like she walked off the bus and just fell into a wormhole. I looked at the spot we stopped at. No girl there. Was creeped out for the entire week. Case file number 1343, written by Bearded Trucker, The Bizarre Events of the Desert Truck Stop. I was stopped for the night at a truck stop in the desert, 60 miles east of El Paso, Texas. This truck stop only has lights around the store and fuel pumps. The truck parking lot area is only lit by any headlights that are left on. I get to bed around 2200, thinking it'll be a nice quiet night. At around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up to a tapping on my truck, like someone was trying to wake me up. I ignore it and try to go back to sleep, but the tapping gets louder and louder and eventually turns into a sound similar to someone beating their hand on my door and cab. I got out of bed and opened the curtains to the side. I heard the sound coming from there and there was nothing there. I opened the curtains on the other side and nothing there either. There were no trucks on either side of me, so I threw my shoes on, grabbed my machete and flashlight and went outside to see what the hell was going on. There was nothing, no footprints, no paw prints, absolutely nothing there. I get back in my truck and turn on my side markers, so I'm somewhat illuminated. Close the doors, lock them, and run my seatbelts through the door handle and buckle them in to add essentially another lock to both doors. I go back to bed and wake up at around 6:30. The sun is starting to come out, so I go inside for some coffee and breakfast before heading out. Other truck drivers were in there and experienced the same thing I did that night. with no answers as to what it was. I finished my breakfast and noped the hell out of there. Case file number 1344, written by Flebon. A glitch in the Matrix at Ace Hardware. I went to Ace Hardware yesterday for a single item that I can only find there. I go to this specific store maybe twice a year, so I don't know anyone by name or face. As I set down my item at the register, the cashier says my name. I'm used to wearing a name tag at work, so I just say, "Yep." She asks for my phone number, and I provide it for her to type. She confirms my name as it pops up on her screen. I'll add that my name is fairly uncommon. At this point, I realized she had said my name twice now, but there's no way she could have known it before pulling up my account. I called her out and said, "I swear you said my name before I gave you my phone number." We make eye contact for a second, and at the same exact time, in complete synchronicity, we both say, "Must be a glitch in the Matrix or something." I stood there wide-eyed and slightly stunned. She seemed completely unaffected. She broke eye contact and said my total was on the screen. I laughed nervously, finished my transaction and left. My brain went many places trying to explain what had happened. Facial recognition? In a freaking Ace Hardware? No way. Maybe she knew me? I've definitely never seen this woman. Am I on some kind of list? Is she an all-seeing, all-knowing demigorgon? Glitch in the Matrix? Probably not, but I thought it would be fun to share. Case file number 1345, written by Cartulinas. The Day the Chicken Spoke. Rural Spain in the countryside. Me being around 10 years old. When I was a kid, my father used to buy me a couple of chickens for the summer. Then my aunt would raise them and sadly, we eat them. I didn't know this at the time. That summer, I was raising 2 chickens. A dyed pink one called Poliana and a dyed green one called Maximiliano. Yes, I was a bit dramatic naming pets. I was sitting on the porch of my house reading Harry Potter, and the chickens were around eating things and going for a dander. At some point, they went down the street, field, and I couldn't see them. They had been over there before and they were always fine, but not that day. Suddenly, Maximiliano, green, came running towards me making a lot of noise and tweeting, chicken shouting very loudly at me. It was very, very stressed, very loud, and moved its wings and body like telling me, "Help, help!" I stood up and went behind him as he took me down the street. There I found my pink Poliana, lying down facing up and a dog on top of her with its mouth in my chicken's body and hurting Poliana. I was afraid, only 10 years old, so I took a stick and threw it at the dog so it got scared and it ran away. Luckily it did. I came closer to Polly. It seemed to be dead and had blood all over. I kneeled down to pick her up in tears, but as soon as I came close, it opened its eyes, stood up and started running home with Maxie. My dad healed the injury on the chicken's leg, and after a week, Poliana was fine again. I will never be tired of telling this story. A chicken told me that his friend's chicken needed help. It sounds crazy, but I will never forget how Maxie was all stressed out looking at me and chicken shouting telling me that Polly needed help and made me follow her. Amazing. Case file number 1346, written by Time lost, anxiety gone. In my early 20s, I had a lot going on in my life. I had left school, had started a new career, was engaged to my high school sweetheart, and my anxiety was building up. This was in the mid-80s, and I wore a watch. It was a gold Timex analog watch that my father gave to me. I always set the watch on my bedside table before going to sleep. I was becoming very anxious about deadlines, and I found myself constantly checking my watch to make sure I didn't fall behind with anything. One morning, I woke up and reached to my bedside table, and my watch was missing. I checked around my table. I crawled over the edge on the bed and looked upside down under the bed. No watch. I got up and looked around the base of the bedside table. No watch. I showered, got dressed, checked my yesterday's clothes pockets. No watch. I checked in other parts of the house. No watch. I asked my fiancée if she had seen it. She had not, and to this day I know she was telling the truth. The strange thing is that this morning was the morning of my first day feeling like all the anxiety was lifted from me. I felt 100% better about everything, and my stress levels were even better than they had ever been before. I never ever found the watch, and I've never worn one since. Case file number 1347, written by Dinkin Flicka, The Quantum Tomato. So, about 2 years ago now, I was going out doing errands with my mom, pretty normal. We stopped at a fruit and veggie market and were doing some shopping when we stopped at the tomatoes. I noticed a particularly large and deformed tomato, so naturally, I pick it up for further inspection. I turn this tomato around and underneath is this really gross looking rotten spot. It's all green and mushy. I put it back down and we pay and leave. Now this is where it gets really weird. We make a last stop at the grocery store before going home for some other items, and while walking through the produce section, I noticed in the pile of tomatoes an eerily similar looking one to the monster I had picked up at the market. I had this super odd feeling come over me, almost like déjà vu. I picked up this new tomato and I swear to you it was the exact same tomato. Same large size and deformity and the gross rotten underbelly. My mom thought I was insane and brushed it off because I was freaking out about this interdimensional tomato. This sounds so stupid as I'm typing it out, but I swear I picked up the same tomato in 2 different places within the span of an hour. Bonus file written by Izki117, The War Memorial Mystery. Several months ago, I had finally passed my motorcycle test and had taken to riding everywhere in my city. At the time, I was on my little 250 Ninja and found that one of my favorite routes was riding from the hills into the city and through Kings Park in Perth. Nothing seemed out of place and the night was warm. Kings Park has winding roads everywhere and lots of war memorials. It's not lit by lights in most areas, so it becomes pitch black. As I was riding through a dark area around 12ish at night, I turned on my high beams. It's about 40 kilometers an hour through the park. As I rounded a bend, I noticed a man standing against a tree. Since I didn't want to blind the poor bastard, I turned my high beams down. In that split second of doing that, the dude disappeared. I had to do a double take. Was I imagining that crap? I stopped my bike and looked over. Nobody was there. No bark on the tree to show a silhouette of a man. No bush close by, too. I noped out of there quickly as. What I find most bizarre about the experience is that at the base of these trees, there is a small plaque that commemorates the life of a fallen soldier in the war. Had I seen the spirit of that fallen soldier? I don't really believe in ghosts, but I'll stand by what I saw, and I certainly don't take late rides through Kings Park alone anymore. Case file number 1348, written by Aubrey Law. My quiche mutated before my eyes. Last weekend, my family and I stayed in a house at the coast to celebrate my mother's 70th birthday. We arrived Friday evening and decided to go out to breakfast Saturday morning. The restaurant we chose was a Grateful Dead themed restaurant called Grateful Bread. My husband and I have been there a few times and loved their delicious menu. Since we were a party of 7, we were split up between 2 different tables. I sat at a table with my husband and father, while my son, mother, sister, and her boyfriend sat at another. My husband and I sat facing the bakery counter and whiteboard with the daily specials written on it. Written on the board was the quiche of the day, which was a spinach, ham, broccoli, and cheddar quiche. It sounded great, so I ordered it. When the quiche arrived, the top was completely covered in a layer of cheddar. It was delicious. Nice chunks of ham, and large, steamy broccoli bits. As I was eating, my husband said casually, "Looks like you got the last piece of quiche." I looked up to see the waitress erasing the quiche from the whiteboard. She then wrote in another quiche, which was a mushroom, onion, and zucchini option. I told my husband I was happy that we came early enough because I wouldn't have ordered that one. I don't like mushrooms or zucchini. I go back to eating, and as I load up my fork, I realize there's no longer cheese on the top of my slice, and my quiche is filled with mushrooms and zucchini? What just happened? I asked my husband, showing him my food. He was dumbfounded. My husband is the type of guy you see in horror movies that is always trying to convince his wife that the obviously haunted house is just old and creaky. He is very practical, and even he claimed this must be a glitch. When I showed my dad, he just made a joke about the Grateful Dead. When we left the restaurant and I told the rest of the family, they tried to explain it away. My sister said the quiche must have been half and half. The only problem with that logic is the way the food was split up. Mushrooms in the back? Broccoli in the front of the slice? And what happened to the cheese? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it was extremely strange. What do you think? Case file number 1349, written by Midas Artflower. The flight missed. The affair revealed. Betrayal unveiled. Many years ago, I was going on a week-long business trip. I had begun to suspect that my boyfriend at the time wasn't faithful and, as a result, felt apprehensive about being gone that long. The morning I was returning home, the room phone rang and it was him. This was odd because our routine was to call each other in the evening, so I was immediately on guard. Then I realized he wasn't calling from his place because the background sounds weren't right, if that makes sense. I confronted him, and he admitted he'd been out the night before, had overindulged, allowed himself to be taken home with someone, wasn't sure of her name, had no idea where he was or where his car was for that matter. Ugh. In his diminished state, I got him to admit he'd been unfaithful with someone else as well, and told him this was the end for us and good luck finding your car. Due to my state of upset, when I looked at the return ticket again, I confused the flight number and the departure time and missed my flight. The nice lady at the airline counter could tell I wasn't having my best day and was very accommodating, but there was going to be a considerable wait for the next flight. I was sitting around fuming and waiting when a porter walked past an enormous box on a flatbed. The return address label was also quite large and bore the name Magda, and the country of origin was Belarus. And I immediately knew he was having an affair with a woman by that name from that country. Names made up, but that exotic and that far from our home? Sure enough, when I saw him collecting my things, I hit him with this information and thought he was going to pass out. He got so pale. Case file number 1350, written by MiG-2900, the Adirondack Aliens. Summer 2003, northern Adirondack Mountains near Saranac Lake. Around 7 p.m. Myself and a group of friends witnessed a very strange object in the sky. The object was dark, matte black color and triangular shape. The object was roughly 75 to 100 feet across, flying very slowly over a lake and about 30 feet above the trees. The object made absolutely no sound. It did not have any visible markings or lights. It slowly flew from one mountaintop over a lake, then over another mountaintop, a distance of around 3 miles. Once it reached that mountaintop, it was out of our line of sight. This event lasted around 15 to 20 minutes. All of us experienced a sense of dread, unable to do anything except to stand and stare at this thing. I wanted to run, get in the truck, and get the hell out of there, but my body and mind froze in fear, and time seemed to slow down like you would experience in an adrenaline rush, injury, car accident, fight, etc. Discussing the event many times with my friends, we all remember the exact details about the object, compare sketches of the event with each other, and all experience the frozen in fear effect. We were not under the influence of drugs or alcohol. At the time, we were all around the age of 20, 7 males, 3 females, and 2 dogs. As far as I can tell, the dogs were unaware or unaffected. I believe we witnessed an alien craft not of this earth, possibly an extra-dimensional object with mind-altering properties. File number 1351, written by Throwaway 2333833736. I spoke a language I never learned. The day it happened, nothing was out of the ordinary or different. I went to my 9-to-5 job like any other day, and it wasn't until I got to the grocery store after work when things got strange. I went to my local grocery store, but it felt off. I usually see the same people, but that day was different. I saw people I've never seen before, and even the workers were some I've never seen. When I was picking out items, some seemed to be in another language, but I assumed it was a brand change. Then I went to the checkout, and the woman cashier started to speak to me. Whatever she was speaking, it was not English or Spanish, the only 2 languages I know. I started to speak to tell her I didn't understand, but I started talking back to her in that language. It honestly felt like I was looking at a situation from outside my body, like I was just a soul inside, and the body was talking for me. We carried on a conversation for about 5 minutes until I was all checked out. When I walked back to my car, I sat there for a solid 10 minutes before driving off. I told my partner, who I lived with at the time, and they told me to stay away from the internet, and they laughed at me. I went back to that store 2 days later and I saw people I knew. The workers were the ones I knew. The brands had their regular names on it. This happened a little over a year ago, and that memory still haunts me every day. Some people say it was probably a dream that I felt like was real life, but I know what I saw and felt. That was not a dream. No one believes me no matter how many details I give. Case file number 1352, written by Lady Pennyface. The Upside Down Photo Frame Mystery. I had this heavy, ornate, hand-blown glass picture frame that sat on my dresser in my bedroom, with a picture of me and my mom in it. I was home alone, and had been in my room most of the day sorting laundry and cleaning up. At one point, I was bringing a load of laundry back into my room, and I noticed the frame was face down on my dresser, which I thought was strange because I didn't hear it fall or anything, and as I said, it was a pretty heavy glass frame. So I go over to pick it up, and in doing so, I see the picture inside the frame is now completely upside down. The picture frame obviously only stands one way. It's not like I picked it up wrong, or I don't know. I went through so many scenarios in a matter of seconds in utter confusion, but nothing made sense. I had chills down my spine. It just wasn't possible. Somehow the frame had been taken apart and the picture had been taken out and turned upside down and placed back in? No shot. I was completely alone. I panicked and just put it back down and left immediately to my dad's house and refused to go back until my mom got home. Case file number 1353, written by Ripe Melon, who was the mystery man who saved my life. I used to have this recurring dream, which would end with me crossing the road in front of my school and getting hit by a red truck and dying every time. It made me feel paranoid about crossing that road at times, but I used to brush it off as it's just a dream. One day when I was crossing the road while on my phone, an old man pulled me back and said, "You were warned so many times and you still are careless." I looked up and saw the exact same red truck passing in front of me. I asked him who he was, and he said, "I'm your friend." I shook his hand and thanked him for saving me, and asked him if he knew me. He replied, "I'm in a hurry. Listen, I'll meet you here tomorrow. Have a good day, friend." I never saw him again. I cursed at myself for not asking him and convincing him to wait and talk to me because I had so many questions. I really hope to see him again one day. Case file number 1354, written by Half-Eaten Waffle. When the future whispers to me. I get snippets of conversation or memories that come to me and don't happen until years later, and sometimes leaves me with chills. Sometimes the memories come to pass multiple times the exact same way over several years, and sometimes they continue past where the original memories end. This one time, I was sick and I was in a semi-hallucinating state. And I had an insight to a memory of a feeling of being watched in some woods under really bright moonlight. There were little bits of sentences jumbled in too, and I thought it was just a weird experience. Earlier this year, I started to recognize an increasingly frequent number of those words and sentences appearing in my day-to-day life, abruptly stopping around the beginning of March. In the first few weeks of March, I had a training hike for an upcoming trip to Philmont, one of BSA's high adventure sites, and the weird moonlit scene came to pass. The temperature got really cold, like from 60 degrees down to 15, and it was really still, and my breath kept fogging up. All this was topped by a feeling that there was something just outside my vision watching me, and I didn't sleep more than an hour or so that night. At one point in the night, some large branch or something fell down, close enough to feel it through the ground, but in the morning there was no fresh branch. Also, I woke up in the night to deep rhythmic thuds like huge footsteps and a sound like heavy breathing outside my tent. In the morning, several of my hiking buddies said that they also noticed the thudding. There was no sign of anything ever happening. Case on to file 1340. Glitches from behind the curtains. You know about that heat distortion effect you see often on a hot summer day over asphalt roads? The wavy shimmer in the air? Sounds exactly like this, but the distortion would have to be in space-time itself. So a ripple within a certain location, like between the vector of you and the plant, You were just seeing into a different universe where the plant was accelerated in time and it was still a real plant. That's the only thing I could think of that would cause this. Ripples in space-time. Weird stuff, for sure. Okay, so the bonus file. The Unexplained Hospital Ring Miracle. So there you have it, your own personal ghost stylist. Nice. It's a solid thing, right? The juxtaposition intended. For a ghost to give you a sign of his existence. So phasing out one ring while the chain is still intact, and it's no magic trick where the chain has a false link or something, no. It's as close to real magic as anyone can get. And it's not magic, but it's still like the scientific method, testing, hypothesis, etc. In this case, it is very real and it really happens. But you're not going to find it in a science textbook, so you have to experience it yourself to truly believe it. This applies to me too. I read so many of these stories, and I believe they're true, but it's still almost just a theoretical belief until it happens to you. It's not deep in your soul, you know what I mean? And now time for the quote of the day. In every aspect of our lives, we are always asking ourselves, how am I of value? What is my worth? Yet I believe that worthiness is our birthright. Oprah Winfrey. Hey, an Oprah quote. I like Oprah. Giving away stuff, it's nice. But knowing your worth, right? What does that mean? Is there a cosmic judgment of worth? Someone weighing the scales and deciding if our intent was justified or if we're just good or bad people and then we're given a certain amount of stuff depending on that? I don't think it applies that way. I think worth is an internal aspect. It's a mindset. Do you believe you're worthy of love, worthy of a good life? I think a lot of people, maybe because of trauma, maybe because of how they were raised, they weren't given enough love and attention. They don't think that they're worthy of any of that stuff. That manifests in a lot of self-destructive behavior, which is very sad, and it's hard to peel away that trauma. And I'm not a therapist, I can't do that for anyone, but I do recommend therapy to people who do struggle, because it's not about cosmic judgment. Everyone, unless you're an actual evil person, in my view, is worthy of love and affection and a good life. I know, it doesn't mean that you're worthy of $1 billion or anything like that. I just mean that the simple things in life, and to not be stressed out all the time, A lot of that, though, is not really about what we deserve or how worthy we are. It's just about going out and carving out that slice of life for yourself. But really, it does depend on you believing you are worthy of that, because if not, you won't have the will to go and carve out that life. Case on file 1341. The Tale of the White Feathers. So, a question. Can our guardian angels interfere in our lives for random, small-scale stuff like a bad hip? Remember in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, where Harry pretends to slip Ron his liquid luck, the potion that gives you more luck? Maybe those feathers were the same intent. So the idea is the guardian angel can't directly interfere, like directly heal you. But showing you a sign that guardian angels are real gives you the impression that they did. So your confidence level would kick in, and then you would just power through the pain because you thought it was healing. A kind of spiritually induced placebo effect. If I'm right, and our guardian angels leave this small stuff up to us, then it doesn't mean they can't give us a confidence boost, just give us a good little push. It's wholesome, in a way, I think. Case notes of file 1342. Writing with my doppelganger. Many of these doppelganger sightings stem from multiverse sight, as evidenced by the girl disappearing after she got off the bus. Whatever space-time distortion enabled this was severed. She walked out of the field, I guess you could say. Or maybe the distortion went away on its own. In fact, I'd wager that other people on that bus saw themselves too. Other versions of themselves. These aren't very common events, but they do happen. Case on file 1343. The bizarre events of the desert truck stop. A small side note here. I highly respect truck drivers, and I think they don't get enough respect and recognition for their work. The long hours, always on the move, away from family, dealing with other drivers on the road constantly. No way I could do it. Not to mention the high level of skill that navigating towns and city streets, backing up into loading docks, etc. requires. Without truckers, nothing would get delivered to the supermarkets and stores, so invaluable. Many thanks. Sincerely. Now, could this have been a strange man trying to lure truckers out to rob them? I could see that. Though without any tracks on the ground, perhaps not. Good idea to loop the seatbelts through the door handles though. That's a good tip to keep. So I don't know if this was a glitch, something supernatural, or just weird human beings. Could be anything, really. You never found out, and I hope you don't. Case notes for file 1344. A glitch in the Matrix at Ace Hardware. An omniscient demigorgon? Let's leave that one in the back burner for now. Given her nonchalant reaction, this must have happened to her frequently. So much so that she's numb to the experience of having knowledge that she shouldn't have. Almost like it finds its way on its own into her subconscious. It's like a dam with a small crack in it. Water can't help but get through. But then I wonder what happens if the dam completely overflows. Too much knowledge. Can our minds handle it all? It's like in Indiana Jones at the end, where the person wanted that knowledge so much, but to the extent that it literally just fried their brains open. There's too much knowledge. Or of course there's Stargate SG-1 with O'Neill downloading all the Ancients' knowledge, and his brain couldn't. It's like overloading a hard drive. It's rewriting things that you need to survive the base layer programming. So yeah, I could see that too much knowledge would be a severe problem. But there's mechanisms that keep the dam pretty robust, even if there's cracks. It's not like concrete, which, if there's a crack, it's gonna break eventually. In this case, it doesn't seem to happen. Good. Now time for the quote of the day. Always laugh when you can. It is cheap medicine. Lord Byron. I can't imagine cheaper medicine. Can you? And this pivots back to my rewatching of Friends. You can rewatch Seinfeld as well. How I Met Your Mother is decent. There's Yes Dear, Everybody Loves Raymond. There's so many good sitcoms that are just, good, fun humor. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. You don't need pills from a bottle. You need laughter for the soul. Case on file 1345. The day the chicken spoke. Amazing indeed. Chickens aren't as stupid as most think, or maybe rather no one does think about how clever they are. Same thing with cows and pigs and all that. An afterthought at best. But humans can occasionally receive bursts of knowledge from the beyond. Can chickens too? It's all down to that soul, in my opinion. It's the interface enabling that ability, receiving that boost. And I think that animals have it. Maybe not insects. There's a crossover point where I don't know where a soul is instilled in a being, but I think that animals do have it. And in this case, that's exactly what was needed. Maximiliano to save Poliana. I love the names. Case on file 1346. Time lost, anxiety gone. The watch somehow was holding or causing a cloud of anxiety over you. So if cursed objects exist at all, this would be an excellent representation of the effect. An item, an object imbued with negative energy, which could manifest in some people as anger, others in fear, and for you, anxiety. It wouldn't manifest evenly for everyone, in my opinion. Case on file 1347. The Quantum Tomato. Not as wild as you might think. Whole people in cars are ported around the world all the time, usually in a more localized distance, which fits here, wasn't too far between stores. My guess is it wasn't just the singular rotten tomato that was ported over though, but a whole bunch of them that were in the same pile. You just didn't notice the others since they had no distinguishing features. And I do believe it was a porting event because in all my life, going to stores, looking for tomatoes or other fruit, sometimes there's rotten stuff, but it's extremely rare, and I don't think you'd find exactly two identical rotten tomatoes in different stores. That's very unlikely to me. Case notes for the bonus file. The War Memorial Mystery. Spirits are bound to specific locations and patterns. If a soldier died overseas, their spirit would be rooted over there. If you did see a spirit, it must have died nearby that memorial area. Was it a historical battlefield? Now time for the quote of the day. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it was necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Alan Watts. So there's two sides to this. On one side, I greatly respect people who dedicate their lives to the pursuit of knowledge and betterment of mankind. Obviously, everything we have, this modern technology, wouldn't exist without people like that, who, in a certain sense, sacrifice their lives to improve all of mankind. No one is required to do that, and you're not a bad person if you don't. You can live the simplest of lives. There's a video by a YouTuber called Peter Santinello, where he documented a person, he went there himself. It was like an Amish guy who just lived off-grid, a very simple life. I don't think he even had electricity. He didn't even have a phone number, and he wanted to date, some, to put himself out there for girls to call him. So it was like a friend's number or something that they gave out. Anyways, I just think there's a beauty in simple living too. So there's two sides. Again, I respect people who dedicate their lives to bettering mankind, furthering our knowledge. Like Elon Musk taking us to the stars. It's incredible. But if that's not you, there's nothing wrong with that. Do not think that you're less just because you want to live a simple, peaceful life. You're not. That is entirely okay. Just don't harm other people. That's it. That's the only golden rule. Don't harm innocent people. If you're being attacked, feel free to defend yourself. Case notes file 1348. My quiche mutated before my eyes. It's not overthinking. Even if your sister's theory is plausible, it fades away to me when you consider the distribution. No restaurant I've ever been to has served a split omelet or quiche this way, unless specifically asked. And I don't think they would for allergy reasons. They have to serve you what you ordered, what was on the menu. So, a quantum quiche indeed, in superposition while not being observed. Whenever you looked away for that brief moment, it switched. Just the standard wild machinations of the universe. Less so in love with the mutating quiche, though. It doesn't sound very appetizing. Mushrooms and zucchini? What's that? No. Case notes for file 1349. The flight missed. The affair revealed. Betrayal unveiled. So not a whole lot I can say pisses me off and boils my blood, but this qualifies. Cheating. Look, it's not unreasonable to be unhappy in a relationship. You get together, you have good times, but down the road something changes or the magic is gone, you want different things, whatever it may be. You're unhappy. So the adult thing to do in that case is to break up. Cheating on your partner, however, is a total betrayal of trust and diminishes yourself. I mean, this is a person you presumably really liked or even loved, and then you betray her like that, or him? You're cutting your own karmic foot, and negatively impacting the ability of your partner to trust someone else in the future. It's just terrible. A soul scar. Now, I don't know if somehow, something about that negativity somehow enabled this unveiling of information in an impossible way, to know the name of the who he cheated with on some luggage bag that was traveling across in front of you in a random airport. But I do think it provided you with some level of closure, which can't take the pain away, but it's something at least. Case notes of file 1350. The Adirondack aliens. The mind interfacing is the key detail that to me proves this is indeed an alien event. There are a few accounts of this now, where aliens directly connect to a human's mind, but apparently not other animals. Usually this leads to a sense of calm, but my guess is the connection doesn't always work. Think of a Bluetooth failing to connect properly. Then imagine that it's 1 trillion times more complex, so of course there's going to be errors. No matter how advanced these aliens might be, they're going to have Bluetooth issues when dealing with a human mind. Good thing it doesn't seem to have any lasting effects. Now time for the quote of the day. I don't make jokes. I just watch the government and report the facts. Will Rogers. Yes, there's a lot of jokes when it comes to the government. Won't go too deep there, but just to say, the military-industrial complex, spending $40,000 on a toilet, and all other kinds of things that are just irksome. And while it is a joke, it's not all that funny, is it? What can you do? Case notes for file 1351. I spoke a language I never learned. Having a partner who'd laugh at me for sharing something serious and yes, somewhat crazy in the colloquial sense of the word, how could I be with someone like that? Know what I mean? It's an issue of trust. If the partner you're with can't take you seriously even in those moments, I can't see a future in that. I definitely believe you. Initially I was thinking, maybe you were having some kind of subtle stroke. There are signs of a stroke that involve language distortion, inability to speak, you can't understand what's being said, but also, you can't speak either. So, at least to my knowledge, you can't have a stroke, have language be distorted, but carry out a fluent conversation in that distorted language that is in reality just English or whatever the normal language is you speak. So barring some strange medical issue like that, what if this was a parallel world where the language they developed over there was radically different, and you were inhabiting the body of that person, the you in that universe, which would have all the memories and knowledge of how to speak that language? So I suppose it's not too impossible. Languages can alter significantly if the universe's changes were made centuries ago. They ripple out in time and have lasting, massive impact over the course of centuries. Case note so far, 1352. The upside down photo frame mystery. Yeah, a pretty straightforward one in this case. It's just an error in the loading of the object, the reloading, that is. A picture frame in this case, yeah. It reloaded, but just with improper orientation in the spatial axis. Flipped over. Strange, but actually pretty simple. Case file number 1353. Who is the mystery man who saved my life? Okay, guardian angel event, and in this case, he possessed the body of that man, saving. Maybe slightly annoyed with all the warnings he gave you that you still weren't paying enough attention. Of the dangers in crossing the road. I mean, fair enough, look both ways, right? And outside of the glitch realm, I think this should be a PSA blasted all over all the time. We're addicted to our phones now, it's true. But when we're out and about, we should be aware of our surroundings. It can literally save your life. We won't always have a guardian angel on our back able to step in and provide that divine intervention. And if you don't have one, you have to be your own guardian angel. That starts with paying attention. Case on so far, 1354, when the future whispered to me. I'm sure it can feel this way, but I don't think there's anything nefarious or malicious involved with your foresight gift. And I think it is indeed a gift, even if you can't control it, or at least don't know how to yet. Curious though, the foresight to an actual glitch, the sounds and thuds of something that isn't even there. I suppose you could see into the future even to a point where it's not loaded or rendered correctly, even to the point where it's unstable. And now time for the quote of the day. Reading is to the mind what exercise is to the body. Sir Richard Steele. And the great thing with technology is now, in these modern times, you have a phone. You can download Audible, or there was another app where it condensed an entire book down to like 15 minutes, the core nuggets. Forgot what it was. Blinkist, I think it is. Not sponsored or anything, I just thought it was an interesting concept. Because yes, reading is great, but you don't have to physically read like a book. You could read online, text online, you can have someone read to you. Audible is great for that. It's just downloading information into your mind and sometimes new programs. You're loading information onto your hard drive or SSD, I guess the mine's pretty quick. Keep loading new programs in, just make sure they're not viruses. That's the only difficulty. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.